All right, here we go. 7th grade OSTP prep. All right, let's have a look at these. I'm not going to go through every single one, just one by one. Some of them I'll breeze over. Some of them I might go into a little more in depth. Okay, number 1. This one's pretty easy. You can see y is 2 times x. Number 2, what happens to b as a increases? Okay, a is increasing by 1. B is decreasing. Okay, you can see it's decreasing here by 2. Number 3, if C is 3D and D is 12, put 12 in there, 3 times 12 is 36. Okay, a negative rate of change. Remember that we read a graph from left to right. Okay, so if you're reading from left to right, just like you read text, which one is going down? The only one that's going down is A. All right. What value of n makes the equation true? You can plug in the answers or you can solve. You can add 23 to each side and divide by 7, get 16, or you could plug them in and see which one of these are true. What's the value of x here? Subtract 9 from each side and divide by 5, you get A. Beth has $300. Each week she buys a $15 CD and a $5 book, so she spends $20 each week. How much money will she have left after 6 weeks? Okay, so she spends $20 each week times 6, and then subtract that from 300. So subtract 120 from 300, you're left with 180. Number 4, what's the value of x here? Add 6 to each side. Now, subtract 6. Okay, when we're subtracting from the negative, remember you combine their values and keep it negative. So that's negative 20, and then we divide by negative 2. And that makes it positive. So that's why x is positive 10. Okay, and this one, remember, we keep the fraction together, subtract the 4 from each side. Okay, and then we get x over 7 equals 5, and then multiply by 7 on each side. X equals 35. See. Number 6. He needs 120 to fix his car. He has 65. He earns $5 per hour. 65 is what he has, plus $5 per hour, means we're multiplying every hour by that. We'll get him 120. So that is C. All right. The product of 6 and a number x is greater than or equal to 68. So the product is a multiplication, so it's not A or B. Greater than or equal to makes it C. When we're trying to solve an inequality, we solve it the same way as an equation. So in order to get rid of the 3 here, I have to multiply by 3 times 3 on each side. There was a question whether the sign flips because there's a negative here. We are not multiplying by a negative number. We're multiplying by a positive number, so the sign will stay the same. So S is still less than, and so that makes it C. S is less than negative 45. Here we have to add 8 to each side. Now notice that the sign is pointing at the B. That means it still has to point at the B, which means it's not B. And then we have D for that one. Okay, here, subtract 15.8. The sign does not flip, so it's A. This means that it's greater than, all these values are greater than negative 2, and the open circle means that it can't be equal to. So it's not C, it's greater than negative 2. Now, we can take this solution and plug that in here and see, is that a true statement? Or we could solve this one, divide by negative 3 on each side, that sign would flip. A is greater than negative 2. He's buying a CD for $8.88 and a book. He has $20. Which inequality model is that? That is B. Let's move on. Okay. I'm not going to look over 1, 2, and 3 with you. 1 is B, 2 is B, and 3 is B. Number 4, in order to compare the fractions, you can either change them to decimals. You do that by dividing. You do 5 divided by 8 and get your decimal. Or you can change them to fractions with the same denominator. So I did that for you here. We've got 5/8, which is 10/16, 8/16, 12/16, and then we can compare them and find that the 12/16 is the most, which is the 3/4, which is what A/8. So that's C. Okay, looking at some square roots. Squares and square roots. Number 1, a squared is 64. That's 8 squared, 8 times 8. Number 2, the square root of 20. Well, 3 squared is 9 and 4 squared is 16, so it's not this. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25, so it's between those two. Number 4, which number is closest to 80? Square root of 80. Well, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, so it is C. Which model shows us 25? 5 by 5 is 25. What's the length of one side of a square that has an area of 289 square units? You would go through and just square these lengths, and you'd find 17 squared is 289. Okay, for this first number here, make sure when you're reading through this, when you see 9 boys and 13 girls and you just start looking at the answers, you see 9 to 13. But notice they say girls to boys. Okay, how many girls? 13 girls. So 13 to 9. Okay, that's one of those tricky ones that you just need to pay close attention to and make sure you're reading it closely. How do they want you to list the ratio? This one says girls to boys. Okay, number 2, we want to set up a proportion. We know that 3 pounds are $1. How many can we buy for $6? Well, you keep these two together and make sure the dollars are on the same side of the fraction. So pounds are together here on top and dollars on bottom. That's good. And then the 3 pounds and the $1 are together. So it's going to be A. Notice here we have pounds on top and dollars on top. That wouldn't work. Here we have pounds on top and dollars on bottom, but the 3 is paired with the 6, and so that doesn't work. For problems like this that have a scale, I like to do model to actual. So model to actual, and then we can set up our proportion equals model to actual, because we have, you could rearrange it. There's many different ways you can arrange this, but that's how I like to do it. Model to actual. So in the model, 40 miles are 120 miles in the actual. And then in the model, 2 inches is X inches in the actual. So then we would cross multiply that, and you'd get X times 40 is 120 times 2, and then divide by 40 on each side. This is times, and then you get C, 6 inches. Alright, and number 4, if it beats that many times in 1 hour, how many times in 1 minute? Well, there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so divide that by 60, you get D, 72. Alright, 12 out of 30 math questions were completed, which means he has 18 left. That's a little bit more than half. If you do 18 divided by 30, that's how you would get it. Part to whole is C. Here we know that it's on sale for 20% off, so we multiply 32.5 times, and remember to change your percents to decimals, times 0.2, and that would give you 650. Here we're looking for 25% of 3,600,000 and some thousand. So multiply that times 0.25 and you would get D. Now number 4, here you have to take the 7.75 plus the tax, which is 7.75 times 5%, 0.05. And that will give us how much we have in total. We want to know the change. So he's paying with a $10 bill. So we want to find this and then subtract that from $10. Or you could write it all in one expression like this. $10 minus all this, and that would give you $1.86. All right. These order of operations, very important. What happens first? Exponents. That becomes 4. What happens next? What happens first is parentheses. 8 plus 3, then exponents. And then we go left to right. Okay, multiplication doesn't necessarily come before division. We go left to right. Okay, very important. So this one's D. Here, parentheses first, then the exponent, then multiply these two, and last thing you do is add them. That's B. If you've made mistakes, go back through, see where did you mess up on your steps. Parentheses first, exponents next, then you multiply these two, then you divide, and then you add the 3. Don't add the 3 to the 4 before you've divided here. That's going to be tempting to do 4 plus 3 and get 7. Okay, careful. The answer is D. 2 squared is 4 to the 3rd power is 64. Value of the expression here. Okay, parentheses first. Inside the parentheses, careful. They're trying to trick you here. We have to do 4 times 2 first. Then we're going to do 3 minus 8. And then we're going to do the exponent 25. And then 25 times negative 8 gives us negative 125. All right, lots of negatives here. So take your time. Make sure you're evaluating that first. Parentheses, there's nothing inside the parentheses. So exponents first. Negative 3 squared gives me 9. There's a negative outside the parentheses, so that stays there. Negative 1 to the 3rd power is negative 1. So now we have negative 9 minus negative 1. Minus a negative is plus. Negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8. All right. You can practice with that, keep looking over some of these problems, and you got this. See you next time.